But
Yeah,
then,
the first and second season were essentially a core one of you know core one and two is kind of how they should have treated it, but because it was like almost back to back. You had the first season, which did part one. There were a couple of OVAs between season one and two, which I highly recommend watching. Then
yes,
you
they
had
are good.
season two that came out in April of 2020, and then season three, which I believe was I want to say 2023 or 20. It was either 2022 or 2023, one of the two. Um, that for season three. Anyways, sorry.
Yes. So, as we saw there towards the end, we find out some interesting things about people in power that we didn't know had that much power, and things that our little bookworm is tasked with handling as a priestess, a blue robe priestess with tons of mana ability.
Yes, and let's just say the High Bishop is not exactly her friend.
No,
Ferdinand is her go to guy in the temple. The High Bishop, even though he looks like the grandfatherly Santa Claus type, not her friend at
no,
all.
he definitely is not. He's a friend to no one except himself.
Yeah,
Maybe a few flower girls.
yeah. Well, that's exactly it.
Ew.
He's kind of like the go between between the noble society at large and the temple, and
Mhm.
we'll find out his a little bit about his background here towards the end of season three.
Yes, yes, we will. Yep, one of the guys, the OVA has two cameos. That's right, he does.
Okay, so towards the end of season two, we find out that Mine's mom is pregnant, which is going to be another very important detail going forward because Mine's family is about to expand and she's about to get a little baby uh, brother or sister in the mix. Okay,
Mhm.
and we are eventually introduced also to two more attendants. We have Rosina, who knows how to play an instrument called the harpsichord. Um, and when you listen to the anime, the strumming harp type instrument that you hear is that instrument that is being played. And then we have Wilma, who is known as an artist. She's like she can draw pretty much anything and everything with great detail. So again, Mind's world is expanding, her retinue is growing, and she's going to be learning about how to be a um, noble, more so now going forward than she was before.
Yeah, an actual noble as
An
opposed to
actual,
just
no kidding, noble, because
yeah.
one of the problems is that before uh, mine had passed out because Ferdinand had sent her to the punishment room to make her think about the bad things that she did back during the Starbinding Festival because she messed up and they didn't clean up the place rightly. Yeah, Ferdinand's VA is a great singer. I highly recommend listening to the anime when he's singing because that is the actual VA singing the song, both in the dub and the sub. So one of the things that certain Ferdinand says, she has to learn how to both sing and play an instrument. Doesn't matter what instrument it is, but Ferdinand picks the harpspiel for her because that's the like most noble of noble uh, instruments to play, as it were. Um, there are other instruments to play, but Ferdinand picks this one for her because Ferdinand, as we come to find out, is what we would call a master strategist. And Ferdinand is actually more on her side than he lets on initially. And as part of his apology to Mine, is that he gets her a harpspiel and bedding for the orphanage director's office because of Mine's sickly nature. She has the tendency to pass out. Well, she passed out in the punishment room, and Fran was sitting there going, look, this is not a good idea. We should have her, take away her book time or something else. Don't put her in the punishment room because she's probably going to die. Well, she almost died, and Ferdinand feels guilty about that. And he's like, well, crap, how am I going to make this up to her? So he gets her a harpspiel and bedding, which is kind of a pretty important thing in relationships in the world. You're essentially buying bed sheets and bedding for an unmarried child, an unmarried female child. Two unmarried people doing this is it's kind of interesting. And if you remember God, what was that anime? Fat kid gets strong, cheat skill in another world or something like that, and he gives the bedding to the princess as kind of like an intro gift, and the king flips out and goes, what the hell did you give that to my princess? That's an engagement gift is essentially what it is. Okay, so we go through this and we learn that Ferdinand is a virtuoso. He can sing, he can play this harpsichord, he can make women's panties drop when he plays this. And when you listen to it, you understand why. He is a very well-known musician in the outside world. Ladies faint at the sound of his voice and his harpsichord playing. And so part of the thing here is that they're having a tea party, I guess you could say. Afternoon tea is what they're having here at this point. And Ferdinand is kind of giving her a quick lesson on how to play the harpsichord. Part of the things that she's showing off is she's showing off the cookies that she made, as well as, I won't go into that, Scarlett, because again, that's spoilers.
Minor spoiler.
Yeah, and we're learning a little bit more about the background of noble society and about why Ferdinand is doing this, because Ferdinand wants mine to be adopted by a high-ranking noble, and to do that, she has to know how to act within noble society. One of the things she needs to do is know how to act during these little tea parties and how to sing and how to play these instruments. So he's helping her out. He is literally teaching her how to be a noble in these things. And part of that is teaching her how to conduct a tea party. If the person who is giving the tea party and is providing the food, one of the things that they have to do is they have to taste both the food and the drink before they can offer it to the invitee, the guest, as it were, because they're testing for poison. So if obviously the person is willing to eat and drink the food, then it's probably not poison. So that's one of the things that he's teaching her. He's also teaching her about, the whole adoption process, because since she has mana, she will be wanted in the noble quarter for her mana. So she may be adopted into a noble family. She may be married into an adopted family. All of that depends upon how well she can adapt to noble society and what she can do to better present herself as a noble. And yeah, Ferdinand likes the cookies. So as a matter of fact, one of the jokes is that he's sitting there nibbling on the cookies, and she kind of has it in her head that he kind of looks like a little squirrel as he's chewing on a nut. So it's just one of those little asides that the manga does a whole lot better than the anime does. So one of the things that she's like, so she would like to bring both Wilma into her retinue, but she can't do that because Ferdinand says, well, the first thing you got to do is learn how to play the harpsichord, and you're not going to be able to do that until you get another one. And then that's where Rosina comes in. So as part of the deal of getting Wilma, she brings Rosina into the whole process to teach her how to play the harpsichord, because Rosina is a virtuoso in playing the harpsichord. Like if Ferdinand is top tier, she would be top tier, but just right below Ferdinand as a harpsichord player.
S tier versus A rank.
Yeah, like S tier. She's definitely S tier player, but Ferdinand is like S plus, S plus. Rosina's not going to drop any panties like Ferdinand does, but she's up there, and she's going to become very highly regarded in the world at large. So another thing is that Mine is trying to figure out stories that she can write down, and so she's relaying stories to kids. So she tells them like the story of Cinderella. She tells them the story of the Three Little Pigs, and nobody understands it from the commoner's perspective. You know, these stories that you and I would understand because again, it's a cultural difference. They don't get that. And Ferdinand even beats her down about the Cinderella story because how is somebody that has no mana, no lands, no nothing going to become the future queen of this land because she has nothing. The only thing that she has is her beauty, and that fades obviously with time. But as another aside, when we hit part 5 in this story, um, Cinderella is going to become heavily into play in all of this. Let's just say. So eventually we find out, Wilma doesn't want to become part of Mine's retinue because she doesn't want to leave the orphanage because she was SA'd by a blue-robed priest that was looking for her flowers. So she's afraid of men. Doesn't want to
She's
leave.
traumatized.
Yeah, she is majorly traumatized. She can't even look at men at all. That's how traumatized she is. So it was part of the agreement. Mine says, hey, look, you can stay here and look after the kids and still be part of my retinue, and but I still would like you to draw things for me. So she's like, okay, yeah, I'll become part of the whole thing. And then we start getting into, okay, now that we've got paper, we need to get ink. And unfortunately, traumatized. Yeah, you could say that. So she can't get ink because ink is controlled by what is called the Ink Guild. So they have inks for everything. Guilds for everything. There's a Merchants Guild, ink guilds. What's the other one? The one that Mine's mom. There's a Seamstress Guild. There's another one for dyeing clothes guild, a dyer's guild or something. So there's like guilds for everything, and thou shalt not make inroad or crossover into anybody else's territory, for you shall be spanked very hard. So Mine's like, well, if I can't buy ink because it's so expensive, I'll just make my own. So we spend part of the second season learning how to make ink. So Mine's going through the whole ink process. We get through it, and as part of it, she needs the stuff that's inside of chimneys left over from when stuff is burned. They go, okay, so she sends the gray robe priests out into town to clean all the chimneys and in the lower city. Well, yeah, she was rescued before she got SA'd, but and we'll talk about that here towards the end of next season, Scarlet. That second part. Because spoiler. True, but it traumatized her so much that for all intents and purposes she was SA'd by what happened. They don't say when exactly she got saved, just that she was saved, and it caused her so much trauma that she can't even look at men. So back to this part. So she sends the gray robe priests out, and they start cleaning all the chimneys and everything, and Ferdinand kind of notices it and says, hey, you sent all these guys out to clean all these chimneys. What was the purpose of that? And so she starts talking about, what she's trying to do with the ink. So she goes through the process, makes ink. Wilma makes what is essentially a press of the Lord of Darkness and the Lady of Light, and she draws it out, gets one of Lutz's brothers to carve it out, and they try making it, and this is what they get. Pretty good, but obviously you can't read it. So she kind of puts this on the back burner for right now and starts coming up with stencils because she needs stencils to make better stuff. And yeah, exactly. This is again pre-industrial. These were guilds were how people protected their trade craft. Same where you got electrician guilds, carpenter guilds, masonry guilds nowadays. Essentially they protected the trade from, just anybody willy-nilly coming in and stealing their ideas. So she goes back to Johann and says, "Hey, can you make this knife that does this, this, and this?" And essentially, what she's designing is stencils and an X-Acto knife, which doesn't exist at this time. And Johann's like really happy to be getting more work, and he goes, "Sure, yeah, I can do this for you." So we got another meeting between her and Johann on this stuff. And so we get to the point where they've now simplified it enough to where she can make a simple drawing and recreate it on a blank sheet of paper. So now we've got another major step of bookmaking taking care of. The letter press, as it were, is what it eventually becomes. Printing, printing. She's able to do printing now. Again, Ferdinand takes her into this room, and this is like the second most popular room in the temple for mine. She spends so much time in here, she may as well, just this is her private area where her and Ferdinand can talk, and where Ferdinand, you can see, he's got all these books and scrolls and other things here, because Ferdinand is probably what you would call the uh, Aristotle, Archimedes of his day. He can do everything. Yeah, the lecture room, as mine starts to call it, because all she ever gets from Ferdinand from in this room is lecture. He lectures her about everything that she's doing wrong, that she needs to better communicate, that she sucks at just about everything that she does, and let's try and fix this situation that you've gotten yourself into. And this is where he's also talked about what he needs all this stuff for, and he goes, okay, well, come up with the roller press, and this is probably the next to last step before the printing press. We have the press. I forget exactly what they call it, but essentially it's a roller press. She's gotten Johann to come up with the roller and the printing pad and all this other stuff, and so they roll it out, and this is what they get, and everybody's oohing and ahhing over this, and Wilma is like, "My God, you made my drawing come to life," and she's now got Wilma on her side as a permanent member of her retinue. And so now they start, I'm roboting. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you were there for just a bit. It sounds okay now, but
Okay, where did I miss anything in the explanation of what she did?
No, I think everyone understood still what you were saying. It was just
muffled.
So now she's not exactly to the printing press stage, but she can now mass produce books, and that is what that is her whole goal of what she was trying to do. So as since her stories, like Three Little Pigs and Cinderella and all the other fairy tales that we're aware of, so she has now chosen to print the stories of the Bible, of their Bible, to teach, not only as a proof of concept as she can do this, but to teach children in the orphanage the story of the Bible, as it were. So now she's done that. She's created, 10 of these things. She's got a, you could say that they're one of the goddesses, one of the minor goddesses within the hierarchy is Kunstseele, and she's the goddess of art. Again, German names. I ain't German. I'm Texan by birth, so I can't speak German to save my life. And most Germans can't either.
Wait, hold on.
There we go. Got Clifton back.
Good morning to you.
Let's face it, Clifton, you speak English better than I do. All right. So she comes up with an old style form of Japanese binding. There were Germans in Texas, yes, but we don't talk about those Germans. I did not see any of those Germans in Texas at all. So now she's done it. She has created a mass-produced book. She can now read books. All she needs now is stories and, the labor to mass produce all of these books. Well, the problem is that now it's time for fall, and as part of one of the ceremonies, because I talked about the star ceremony and the initial baptismal ceremony. One of the other ceremonies is that the yeah, Tahano, that's true. One of the things that they go out is the fall, as part of the autumnal ceremony, is that they go out to all the countryside and they bring in the fall harvest, and that's what this is called, the fall harvest ceremonies. That they go out to all the towns and various things. They collect the tithe to the duchy, and they're essentially collecting the taxes that the commoners and the other nobility that are out there, they pay their taxes, and they pay it via the harvest or whatever else that their city is within the duchy is known for. So the blue robe priests go out and do this, and this is how the church gets part of their tithe, as well as the blue robe priests gets their payment as they were for the year. But before that, mine wasn't told anything about this because, the blue robe priests want to keep this all to themselves and not let the commoner bitch take any of their money away from them at all. So they kind of leave her out of that. And as part of that, to make sure that she doesn't go anything, the illusion is made that this guy, if you remember him from before, the the high bishop's right hand man, has completely destroyed the library in the temple that Mine loves so much. So she's getting all pissed off, wants to go and kill this guy. Thankfully, Fran has scooped her up and taken her to Ferdinand, and Ferdinand's like, "Did you see this guy do it? Do you know for sure that he did it?" And she's like, "No, but I have a pretty good feeling based on what the dude said." And Fran's like, "You can't go around just arbitrarily saying that a noble did something bad that they didn't." And, he's trying to explain it in very, childlike terms, because at this point in the story, he knows she's smart, but he still treats her like a child. So she wants to have what's called a bloody carnival, and I assume that's, a Japanese thing. But essentially what I've read is essentially there's at a point sometime in Japanese past, some people went and just essentially called a carnival and they killed everybody. It's kind of like the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones.
Nice.
So instead of,
damn.
mine going off and having a red wedding type ceremony, she goes, "Hey, you know what? This is the perfect opportunity for me to go and do, recreate the library in my own image." So we get this nice little discussion about the Dewey Decimal System and the Nippon Decimal Classification System, which is an offshoot of the Dewey Decimal.
Yeah, the Japanese version of it.
Yeah, the Japanese version of it. And so she needs like a listing of all the books, and Ferdinand says, "Yeah, these are all the books that I know of that are in there because these are the ones that I've given." And so they go back through, and we get this nice little montage of them getting the library back in shape. And we get to this point in the story where it's maybe Bloody Carnival has several different origins, and the Japanese one dealt with Fletcher there had a comment about the horror movie, and I think it's in there too that there's a horror movie called Bloody Carnival too, but I don't think that's a Bloody Carnival that she's talking about. So anyways, so she goes back and she gets the library, according to all of this stuff, but she realizes that all the books on magic are missing, and that's what that empty bookshelf part right there is. And she goes back and she says, "Hey, Ferdinand, I don't want to get blamed for this, but all the magic books are missing." And he goes, "Yeah, because magic is the sole domain of the nobility, and we can't have those books in this library." And so, she starts talking about the Dewey Decimal System and blah, 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 because he's like, "Well, how did you arrange all of these things?" And again, she starts talking about it. And Ferdinand obviously realizes that Mine is not who Mine says she is, that she's a lot smarter than she's been letting on, because Mine is stupid.
Yeah, no kidding.
She's been dropping hints all over the place that,
That she's
again,
not
creating
stupid,
those ripples, because Ferdinand has done his homework on who Mine is. And, because again, Ferdinand's a master strategist, and has been, finding out about mine and realize mine's not mine. There's no way in hell that this girl can be, a lowly commoner, daughter of a soldier, child that can do all of these things.
Yeah,
So,
I did.
That's kind of like a plot thread that kind of runs for the next, few episodes.
I did do a quick search on the Bloody Carnival origins. The origins of the Bloody Carnival can be traced back to the the Zakeli Serfs Rebellion in February of 1596, which was sparked by the refusal of the Diet of Transylvania to restore their freedom. The Zeletskis, led by Sigmund Bathory, Prince of Transylvania, sought to regain their freedom by joining his campaign against the Ottomans and Wallachia.
Yeah, and we know how well it turned out for the
Wallachia.
Prince of Transylvania.
Yeah, the rebellion led to the tragic massacre of the Zakeli serfs, marking a significant event in the history of Transylvania and the region's struggle for autonomy and freedom. So yeah, Sunday, Bloody Sunday.
Yep.
Yeah, I muted there for a sec because I was coughing.
Oh yes, and as Scarlett put it, head on a stick, walking around with it in town.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's Romanian. Yeah, it was Romanian.
And we get a little bit more interludes there where Thule wants to learn how to read and write. So as part of that, learning how to read and write, she's going to teach the kids how to sew. Because Thule's actually a pretty good seamstress. Because
Yeah, she's
not
really
only
good at it.
has mine has taught Thule and her mother how to make these hairpins, which is going to become a nice little source of income for the family going forward, as well as how to make the handbags. So that's one of the ways that mine's family makes income also is through the production of these hairpins that she sells through Benno. And you learn about that through one of the OVAs that are between season 1 and 2. So she's giving these kids these books to learn how to, read and to learn how to do the Bible, because if these kids can learn how to read and write, it'll make them better gray-robed priests and maidens in the future. So one of the things also is she takes this to Benno because she wanted to gift Benno with one of the first books that are ever made. And Benno's like, what the F are you doing, child? Anytime that you have the opportunity to make money, you should be making money. You should be selling these books. And she's like, no, I don't want to sell these books. I want to read these books all to myself and keep them all to me and teach these kids how to read and write so that, we can make more books. And Benno's like, you stupid idiot. We need to make money. You need to make more money. And, it's a funny back and forth with them. And this is kind of an ongoing thing with them and the whole thing, because Benno actually does care about mine. And he proves that over and over throughout the entire story that not only does he like to make money, but he actually does care about people. And he does care about mine and the things that he's been doing behind the scenes to keep her secret, to keep her secret from not only the nobility, but from the other commoner merchants and things like that. On where all of this stuff is coming from that he is selling. So one of the things is she's like, well, we're not fully there yet. We can do better on the printing method, and I need to come up with both mimeographs and letterpressing. And obviously, since there are no words for this in their language, every time she speaks a Japanese word or an English word, it comes out like static, because her translation matrix is not making the translation. If you ever saw that Deep Space Nine episode where they meet a race for the first time, and all you hear is garbage coming out of the Universal Translator, it's kind of like that.
Yes.
So she's talking about how to make letterpress, and she's like, well, let me stew on this for a little bit. And in the meantime, she's given a copy of this book to Ferdinand. Ferdinand goes, holy shit. she's a lot further along than I thought she was. Oh my gosh. And so he takes her into the lecture room and goes, explain this to me exactly what you've been doing. And so she tries to explain it to him, and there's some back and forth. Yeah, it looks like book. You get the word with parentheses around it. Like letterpress, you would see letterpress, but in parentheses because the translation's not being made. So she has to make up a word for it. So there's some back and forth between the two, and not only that, but he kind of drops the hint, I believe, at this point, that Mine is going to have to stay in the temple over the winter because of the fact that, like I said, the winters in Ehrenfest are horrible. The streets are horrible. She more than likely would not be able to make it back and forth between there and the temple, and they need her in the temple for the winter ceremonies. And we'll learn more about that here in the next season. Moving along, obviously Gunther is not happy about that.
No,
But
no, he
eventually
wouldn't be.
she, explains to, her family, got to do this. We made the commitment. This is my job. I need to do this. And eventually Effa convinces Gunther to go along with this. Obviously Gunther is not happy about this because he loves his kids and he doesn't want to ever be out of sight to them for as long as he possibly can. So she goes back and she says, okay, everybody's agreed to it, Fran. What do we need to do to prepare not only myself, but the orphanage for winter? Start going through it. Oh, hey, not only that, but, Mine's high grade, noble, blue robes, ceremonial garb is now ready because Karina, as the number one seamstress, has created this for her. And we get this, yeah. Ferdinand, mind broke Ferdinand on how she created the books, and I didn't want to go too deeply in that because you have to watch the anime to really get the, because there's the little dot 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 and then the working symbol. Practically you can see it as not that they animate that, but you can actually see it as Ferdinand's face. They actually do a really good face animation for that as she's trying to explain it to him. So she gets her ceremonial garb. They talk about it. They go through, all the intricate details of it with her because there are prayers actually sewn into her sash. And I know it doesn't do a really good job of explaining it, but also, her obviously her family seal, as it were, her workshop seal, as it's going to become known. There's other stuff that's sewn into it also. Neither the anime nor the manga do a really good job of explaining all the intricate details of it, but you kind of get it's very well detailed and very well done. Karina has done a triple S plus job on this garb. So Ferdinand and Mine are sitting there, and all of a sudden, Mine looks out the window and she sees this bird flying at the window about to crash. But before it does, it passes through the window, lands on the desk, and you hear this guy's voice come out and says, Ferdinand, we need you. It's time for you to do your other job as, this guy who's a master strategist, a virtuoso. And oh, by the way, he's also an accomplished knight of the realm, as it were.
Not just any night.
Not just any night. We'll find out more about Ferdinand as time goes on. But so this is part of the duties that Mine is going to have to do. So Ferdinand is going to treat this as the perfect opportunity to train Mine in one of the ceremonies that she's going to be required to do. So she gets dressed in her ceremonial garb. And they go out through the noble gate, and we see Ferdinand in his armor for the first time. So Ferdinand, who's looking like, dude, like, again, if the ladies see him, they're going to be dropping panties over Ferdinand. All right? No way else to explain this. Ferdinand is a panty dropper. And anything that Ferdinand does, he's like triple S plus, dude. Okay? See him for the first time, everybody's like, oh my god, this guy Ferdinand, he's also a knight of the realm. What the hell? And he does this little thing where we get a good look at Mine's ceremonial garb. We get to look at the ceremonial head pin that Mine's family made for her baptismal ceremony. And also Ferdinand gives her a ring. This is not an engagement ring, folks. This is not Ferdinand getting married to Mine. All right, this is just a ring because nobles, when they are baptized are given a ring. So they're trying to make it look like, mine is obviously a baptized child. I mean, she is, but they're trying to make it look like she's a noble baptized child. So they give this ring to her, they put it on her finger, and the ring shrinks. And it kind of gives a little glowy blue thing that says, oh, my ring has now been activated, essentially. And we kind of get our first look at how the nobility lives. And as you can tell, there's a stark difference between how the nobility lives and how the commoners live, because the commoners live in shit, literally, and obviously the nobility does not, because they have the benefit of indoor plumbing. And here's where we meet somebody going forward who's going to become very important to mine, Karstead. Lord Karstead, actually, he is the knight commander of the Ehrenfest Knights. We don't kind of really know that until a little bit later on, but it's easier to explain who he is now because of how important he's going to do. And I will also like to point out the difference in the cloaks, the capes, between what Ferdinand is wearing and what all the other knights are wearing, to include Karstead. This is very important. I can't exactly tell you now, but it will become very important going forward, as well as Ferdinand's high beast, because as part of being a knight of the realm, Ferdinand has what is called a high beast, and it's a magical creature that he creates that he can ride around on, because nobles just don't walk anywhere. They don't take carriages everywhere. They get around on fantastical beasts called high beasts, and they can look like anything, essentially. Ferdinand's, for all intents and purposes, is a winged lion. And there's significance to that later on that we find out. We'll talk about that later on. So as you remember, I talked about a tromba growing from the tau fruit. This is what a fully grown tromba looks like, and this is what the knights have to fight. It's this magical creature. It sucks out all of the life within this area as it grows, and so obviously then they need to kill this thing quickly, because if it grows too big, it'll suck all the life out of the area, and people can't do anything with it because you can't grow anything in this world. You can't do anything in this world without the life-giving mana that is in literally everything. So the knights are sent in, and before anything happens, there are two knights that are assigned to protect mine. What we have here is this mine here, who is Damuel, and I won't even say this guy's name because he's a dick. All right,
Sir
stereotypical Sir Dickish. All right, he is.
He's the worst.
He's the worst. He is the stereotypical worst noble ever born. He's full of himself. He thinks he's better than everybody else because of his birth. Not only that, but he was actually a priest before he was a knight. And that is actually a pretty significant part of his story. And I'll talk about that more here in a minute as we get into season 3. Because, again, this situation that's going to develop ripples throughout all of the entire duchy. All right, so before the knights go out to fight the Tromba, mine gives a blessing, and everybody's shocked because nobody does this anymore. It's part of that whole thing that the nobles have, they just go through the motions. Nobody really does anything anymore, and this is one of the things that mine has learned as part of her ceremony of helping out the knights, is giving a blessing for the knights to go and fight this Tromba. And everybody's like, oh my God, this is like a wide-scale blessing. Nobody's ever done this before. And as usual, Sir Dickish looks down on her because of this, because, essentially he's like, why the frack are you, sitting here, wasting mana on us, because, we don't need no stinking help from a commoner. And there's a reason why he knows why she's a commoner and not. Damuel's like, hey, back off, dude. This is our job. We're supposed to be here protecting her. You don't need to be looking down upon her. She's a blue robe priestess. Just back off, man. Because Damuel's kind of a nice guy. He's explaining to her everything that's going on, telling her, what the knights are doing to fight the Tromba and how awesome Ferdinand is because he's a Ferdinand simp. Okay. Not only can he get the ladies' panties to drop, but he can get the dudes to drop their underwear too. Because that's just how good Ferdinand is. He is the greatest ever to have been born, essentially. So they're talking Ferdinand up. Ferdinand goes and does his
Got
thing.
the Riz.
Yeah, he's got the Riz. He's got the Riz in the SS+. So the knights are flying on, doing their thing. Ferdinand is able to use a black weapon and fires off, and it turns into, essentially a multi-launch rocket system. These hundreds of arrows come out and hit the Tromba and make it to where the knights are able to fight the main Tromba. And, again, Sir Dickish here is, putting down, Mine because, Mine she's a commoner. And again, he's Sir Dickish because he can do that. And he doesn't like the way that Mine is looking at him. So he goes to hit her. Fran intervenes. Fran is like, shouldn't have been doing that because she should have accepted her quote unquote punishment. So as part of her punishment for Fran as her attendant stepping in to take that punishment, she has to watch, she has to be punished in his stead. And he goes to do it and he makes a knife. And this is kind of like how the manga explained it. And kind of did it a little bit more graphically than the anime did it. Yeah, I won't go too deeply into what the black weapons are, but essentially nobles can use black weapons to fight Trombas. And we'll learn more about black weapons as the story goes along. But essentially, he makes a knife and he's going to go and cut her hair and gouge out her eyes because he doesn't like the way that Mine is looking at him. Throws her to the ground, creates a knife out of, thin air because, magic, and, goes to cut her. And as she's doing that, he cuts her hand because she'd gone up to scream for Ferdinand, hey, Ferdinand, come and help me, raised her hand up, and he cut her hand and her blood starts dropping and it hits the ground. Well, unfortunately, her blood is so mana rich that when it hits the ground, these Tromba branches start growing up and we get our little thing of, oh my God, tentacle porn.
Yeah, the weirdos start going, ooh, the hentai.
So now
Yeah.
Sir Dickish starts freaking out. Damuel is able to keep his head and create a black weapon. These black weapons are important because they steal mana, essentially. So essentially that's what Ferdinand was doing. Ferdinand was softening up the Tromba with all of those arrows so that the other black weapon wielding knights could come in and chop it down. So in the meantime, while this is all going on, Damuel keeps his head about him, creates a black knife, and he starts cutting it. But he's like, damn it, this isn't working. They're growing too fast. And, because she's still bleeding and as more blood she's bleeding out, is creating more branches and blah, 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 blah. And so all of a sudden, Ferdinand sends up a warning signal, says, and all the knights rally around and they're able to seal up her wound and defeat the Tromba and get her out. And while they're talking, Karstead comes up and says, tell me what's going on. And she can't do it because to do it would to be speaking out against the noble, and commoners can't speak out against nobility. And Damuel, so he goes, Damuel, you tell me what's going on. And Damuel's like, well, he's of higher status than me, so I can't really say anything. In the meantime, Mine's been kind of drained of mana. She's not feeling very well. And we get our next running gag throughout the series is that Ferdinand gives Mine a recovery potion that tastes like dog shit.
No.
Okay, because Ferdinand emphasizes emphasizes efficacy over quality.
Over taste, yeah.
Oh well, no quality. Okay,
Oh, the quality, yeah.
Quality is part of how people treat their potions. Does it taste good? It's like ultra nasty. That's what she calls it. She calls it the ultra nasty policy. But the look on her face and everybody else that explains the potion that he gives them at some point in the storyline, like it's the most horrible thing they've ever tasted. They never want to do this again. And as a matter of fact, that becomes a form of punishment in the future, that if you do anything that they find that you can be punished for, they were like, well, we'll just make you drink Ferdinand's potion, and everybody straightens up. But in the meantime, her ceremonial garb that she just got has been ruined. So they kind of like have a battlefield court right there in the thing, and they finally get it out of Daniel about what's going on, because mine is like, look, what'll happen to me if I explain what's going on? Will you protect me? And Karstedt and Ferdinand are like, yeah, you're under my protection, so go ahead and speak your piece. And Sir Dickish there's like, ha ha ha, nobody's going to believe this kid over me. And then it turns out that, they actually believe mine, because, Sir Dickish is a dick.
Yeah, everybody knows he's a dick, and Sir Dickish, also known as Scrotum Face.
They realized he didn't necessarily earn his position as a knight. For the wholesale, and this is where we get a
pissed off.
Yeah, this is where we get High Admiral Ferdinand meme from. Because he's like, yes, you're correct. Commoners can't speak out at nobles, but of everybody that's here, who is the highest status of them all? And you're thinking, well, isn't the Karstedt guy the highest of them all? Well, because no, if you remember back at the beginning of the meeting, Karstedt actually took a knee to Ferdinand.
Yep.
So that actually kind of like, who the hell is this Ferdinand guy? He's, super smart, master strategist. And the joke's on him that Ferdinand's status is higher. And Sir Dickish realizes that's at this moment, he knew he fucked up moment. And you can just see it on his face. And we realized that
we really all wanted to be Ferdinand.
In that moment, you kind of wanted to be Ferdinand, because
protect mine at all costs.
Yeah, we must protect the mine.
Yes.
We kind of get an idea of what the Tromba can do to the geography of the land through the damage that it can cause as they fly over. It looks like a tactical nuke went off in this place. And also during this point, Ferdinand is kind of apologizing. He's like, look, I'm sorry, these guys screwed up. This is on me. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you later on. But in the meantime, I want you to do this. So since Sir Dickish was previously a priest, he's like, Ferdinand's like, well, I was going to be teaching, mine how to do this ceremony, but, since you should have plenty of mana left over because you ain't done jack shit while everybody else has been fighting the Tromba, I want you to restore the land. So he gives the staff to Sir Dickish, and Sir Dickish goes in there. And that's about the amount that he can do. He goes through tries to go through the chant, the spell, as it were, religious prayer. And that's about as best as he can do before he finally gives out. And Ferdinand, jerking it away from him, goes, I can, see that, the Knights Guard has kind of crapped out since I was last a part of it. You guys suck. Let me show you
suck,
what somebody
jackass.
with mana can really do. And we get this vision of how mine has been suppressing her mana over the last year, because she kind of puts it in a little box and closes the box. And so she starts reciting this prayer. The staff starts glowing, and you get this thing with anime magic, as it were, where everything starts glowing and whoosh, boom, the whole crater starts filling up, and everybody's got this look of shock on her face. The grass starts growing, everything starts, replenishing itself because she's putting mana back into the actual soil. Because again, we come to find out what's going on in season 3, that again, as I've mentioned before, mana literally is in everything in this world.
And the trauma takes it all.
Yeah, and this is what it looks like after mine is through with it. And Ferdinand's like, maybe I kind of asked you to do too much because she overdid it. Everybody's in shock. And we'll come to find out there are a few other people in this whole cadre of knights that are going to become important to mine. But for all intents and purposes, right now, the most important are Sir Dickish, Damiel, Karstedt, and Ferdinand. These are the important people that we've met so far up to this point that are going to become really important with mine. And we kind of get a little bit more introspection from Ferdinand about what a shitty job he did protecting mine. And she kind of makes in this, it differs slightly in the anime and in the light novel, in that mine starts speaking up for Damiel in this part, in that she's like, Damiel didn't do anything wrong. He was trying to protect me. He was trying to do the right thing, and Ferdinand's like, okay, I'll take that under consideration. So we get back, and in the anime, it kind of we kind of have a redo of the conversation between them, and Karstedt's like, my guy screwed up. How can I make this up to you? And he's kind of a nice guy. Karstedt's kind of cool. He's not your stereotypical look down upon the people noble. He's funny, kind of jokey. He talks with mine like a normal person would. And he's like, how can I make this up to you? And she goes, well, look, my brand new ceremonial robes that I've only worn once have now been ruined. And he goes, ha, 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 you girls in your clothes. And can I get some new robes, please? And that's literally what he says. Ha, 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 you girls in your clothes. And so he goes, yeah, I'll get you some. So she relays also that, Damiel's a pretty good guy. He was sticking up for me. I don't want to see Damiel punished. And he goes, okay, I'll take that under advisement. And this becomes really important. Because also during the whole tentacle porn issue with when she was getting wrapped up by the Tromba, a blue light comes out of the ring, and it goes to Lutz. And Lutz is like, holy crap, he sees everything that's going on with mine, and he's rushing to the gate, and he gets to her, and he sees her just in time as she's coming out at the gate, and he's looking at her hand going, hey, your hand's okay. And mine's like, dear God, nobles are shitty people. She doesn't say it like that. She goes like they're horrible
that's what
people,
she's thinking.
But, she's crying, and she's like, oh my God. And of course, she gets sick because, anytime she expends any large amounts of mana, she gets sick. And so a couple of weeks go by, and if you're watching the anime, this is kind of like the beginning of season 1, even though we're getting this towards the end of season 2. This is kind of the bookends. Ha ha ha. On the story, they wanted to do it this way because Ferdinand is like the number 2 character in the book, so they wanted to bring Ferdinand into the story early, and we've come to find out we're getting all this in flashback. So Ferdinand and mine are taken into the lecture room, and so he uses this device to scan through mine's memories, and he comes to find out that mine is not who she is. She's from another world. We get all these things, we see all these things about, the world that she lives in and where she comes from. We see Japan, see libraries. We see, Mine's talking to him and talks about, oh yeah, well, I went to school to learn how to do all these things. And because he's like, well, you were a noble in the other world, right? And she's like, no, I'm just some normal kid that went to school to learn how to do all this stuff. Hey, look, arts and crafts, I learned how to do that. This is where I learned how to do all the sewing and cooking and all that other stuff because my mom made me do this because she wanted me to have interests other than books. And so she takes him to a used bookstore and libraries and shows him all this other stuff. And, Ferdinand's, practically crying in time. Yeah, she didn't keep her browsing history secret. That's probably the best way to describe this. She didn't do a really good job of keeping her browsing history secret. So, and then we finally get a look see at what her life was before. She talks about being in a living room, and they did a better job in the manga than they did in the anime of doing this. She's showing him around, and Ferdinand's really impressed because she thinks she's nobility, just low level nobility. Showing her the hairpins, showing her the bathroom. She takes a bath in her memories, while Ferdinand is watching, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing, child?" And she goes, "I haven't had a bath in such a long time. I want to take a bath." So, and then we kind of get this, nice little sweet moment where next thing you know, she wants to eat something, Japanese cuisine. And then we hear Mind's mother's voice for the first time. And we get that record scratching moment where she's like, having a moment with her mom. Because in the book, in the anime, it shows her reading a book as her mom's cooking the food. But the manga does a better job because it's all of Mind's favorite foods. We turn around; they don't do this in the anime, but they show her mom's face in
her name,
and they say her name. Um, and she has this moment where she thanks her mom for everything that she's did because essentially she's taken advantage of her mom in her previous life, and her life with her current family has taught her to come to love those moments in life where you're with your family and you're able to do things. And it's a real tearjerker moment. I mean, holy cow, if you didn't cry at the end of season 1 where Thule and Mine are meeting up after that whole big Darth Mind moment, then if you're not crying at this moment, you have no feelings. You have no emotions whatsoever. This is a huge moment in this whole story because it's a chance for Urano Mine to say goodbye to her mom, and then as she's slowly coming out of this, she's trying to say, "I'm sorry, I love you," and part of that is she's feeling all these emotions. Well, the problem with that is that Ferdinand is now feeling all these emotions too.
Not only seeing it, but he's feeling it.
He's seeing it, feeling it, and he's feeling these kind of emotions for the first time in his life. And we'll find out more about Ferdinand's story when we start hitting parts the next season and the following seasons afterwards. But let's just say these are not feelings that Ferdinand's are accustomed to, and he doesn't quite know how to handle them. And he calls them, "What an awful feeling." He went too deep in the little Vulcan mind meld he had going on. He went way too deep and he got too attached, and he starts getting all these feelings. And he's like, "Oh crap." So in that moment, Mine is like goes up and hugs him because she's come to realize the importance of human touch, and how people relate to each other, by being with this new family of hers. And the next scene we cut to is Ferdinand telling Karstead all of this information. He's like, "Holy crap, we need to find, some noble that'll adopt this girl. Oh, hey, by the way, Karstead, you're really high up there in the hierarchy. You only have sons. I'm sure your wife would really, really be happy to have a daughter."
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really talk about this too much in the well, I will say they haven't gotten to this part in part 2 of the manga because again, it's all simultaneous release, and they're kind of shotgunning how they're putting these parts out to the manga. And I'm curious to see how they're going to adapt this in the manga. But in the light novel, this is actually the first part of part 3 where we're seeing this in flashback in that Ferdinand has gone to Karstad's, and he's taking these two devices, crowns, whatever, back to interrogation devices is probably the best way to put it. Back to Karstead, who's actually the holder of these. He's not the holder, but he's the intermediary for holding on to these magic tools, as it were. And Karstead's like, "Me adopt this child? What do you mean? Won't that cause complications between me and my wife? Because we're gonna have to explain where this child came from, dude." Karsted's like, "You know what? I'm gonna let you, Ferdinand, explain to my wife how this all happened. And we don't get this in the anime, but it is fully explained in the light novel. And when we get to that part, I'll explain that to you. So we come to the end of the part two. We come to the end in the middle of part two of this thing where she's sitting around. She tells her family in this little moment, thanks for everything that you've done. I love you guys. You're great. I want to make sure that you it's the manga for part two is fully translated in Japanese. Right now, J Novel, who is doing the translations, is only up to part 8 or 9, I think it is. It's only up to the part where we meet a certain special someone who we're gonna find out in the next season. So we kind of end the season with Mine having a little concert for Ferdinand, and he goes, good job. And if you get to know Ferdinand through the story, you realize that the highest praise that Ferdinand can give to anybody is him telling them good job, because he sucks at praise, but he cuts like a knife on everything else that he does. He has no tolerance for stupid people at all. And then part of the light novel, you get these, at the end of every anime episode, you get these little intertestamental novels. Yushina is the one that does the illustrations for the light novels. She does a few of them throughout the anime series. She did the part 1 also for the of the manga, and she also does what are called these little 4-panel illustrations at the end of all the light novels, and for most of the manga too that I've seen. And it's kind of like these little funny stories. There's one here where it's taken from Thule's perspective, where she's like, oh yeah, it's great, Mr. Otto, and Mr. Otto is so great because his enormous praise for Karina, who is his wife, is just the next best thing, because Thule is a simp for Karina. She's a rock star in the seamstress world, okay, and she loves Karina. Karina's like the best thing ever. Meeting her is like meeting some famous person that you're attracted to in some way or another. And we also kind of get this another little funny story from Thule's point of view, where she's going through, there's Mr. Mark, Mr. Otto, Mr. Benno from the Gilberta Company, then there's Fran, then there's the High Priest, Ferdinand. Wait a second, the older guys have a thing for Mine? It's just like this little story, funny thing. And then we now get into the next season, which is season 3, but is the midway point through part 2. I don't know if you want to take a break here.
Yes.